Welcome to our interview with Sara Bausch. I'm Joanna Cooper, and this is
Elias!
my son Elias. And how old are you, Elias?
7.
Yeah, and we're going to do interviews. What are we going to call them? We're going to call them the Tell Us What You Know show.
Yeah!
Okay, so
that's a great idea.
This is our first episode. Welcome to our inaugural episode. You're our special guest.
I feel very privileged now. I really do.
So what was our first question, Elias?
I think let me look at the script.
Okay.
Just let me look at the script.
Okay, can you come over here?
What is a good
What is your
job title? I think.
What is your
data?
job?
Okay, health researcher and data scientist.
And the follow-up question is, what do you do? Uh-oh, you're frozen.
I do stuff. She always does stuff. Well, I don't understand Minecraft.
And I try and find patterns in it. So.
Wait, you froze for a second. We heard I try and find patterns in it. What came before that?
Oh, I look at data all day and try and find patterns in it. So if there is a group of people that all characteristic and they all get sick at the same time, it might be that got sick.
Wait, it might be that what?
That pattern might be part of the reason they got sick. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
If all people who went, and this is like literally in every public health textbook, church picnics all the time. And so they say like, so-and-so went to a church picnic, they ate mayonnaise-based potato salad and 80 of them got sick. You know, so it's something like that. So
like pattern.
Or the pattern could be kids, older people, women, redheads, people who own pets.
I know a problem somebody wrote.
A math problem?
Yeah.
Do you remember that pattern we learned about the cholera and the water pump?
Yes.
Very famous, John Snow and the Broad Street Pump. Absolutely. That's an amazing example. That's one of the perfect examples of what I do, actually.
Okay.
I do stuff too.
We learned about that in a science book that we have.
Look.
Should we read the rest? Should we read the other next question, Bo?
In a sec.
Okay, I'll read it. Were you always interested in epidemics and pandemics?
Yes. When I was little, I read a book that was really too old for my age. I was probably a little bit older than Elias. And I read this book called The Stand. And I was way, way too young for it. And I said to my mother, Mom, I read this book about a flu that wiped out the world and it scared me. And she gave me a book on the Black Death and said, oh, here, this is when it happened. And I was like, oh. And so pretty much, and I also think I grew up, I'm aging myself here, but I grew up when the AIDS epidemic was getting started. So.
And that was the early 80s.
Early 80s of death. What? There's death.
Sarah's frozen now.
Brown.
Oh wait.
You're bad. How you doing?
Now you're frozen.
Sorry. Come on over here.
So you're walking your dog right now. You froze up for a second.
And then everything went back to normal.
And you were talking about the AIDS epidemic.
And epidemic.
Right.
Bring your thing over here.
So.
And that made you interested in epidemics?
Yeah.
It did, because when I was younger, the AIDS epidemic had just started, and I started hearing, all these things about people getting sick, and they didn't know why, and it just interests me. It always had, and so that's why I went into epidemiology, because of these two, I suppose, formative experiences.
Okay. So what was our next question? Do you have, why don't you come over here so you can participate? Elias, come over here so you can participate.
In a minute.
Okay, well, we have a scientist here to ask questions of, and you were supposed to be asking questions.
I'll ask a question when I add this last piece to my paragraph.
Okay, so our next question was,
I'll do it. I'll say the next question.
Okay, come here and ask it.
Okay. Can I see the script? Our next question was, It used to be
No,
it
right
used
there.
to be cupcakes, and now it's when something.
What do you think? Oh,
When do you think things will go back to normal?
You know what, hon? I think it's going to be a while, and I will tell you why. Because what we have is, it's called a spillover of a zoonotic virus. This was a virus that was in animals, and it made a jump into humans. And when that happens,
Yeah, you learned about that part, right?
Yeah.
right, it's called a zoonotic virus. And what happens is we don't have any immunity to it. And there's an awful lot of us around.
Only the
So,
animal guys do.
huh?
Only the animal cat do.
Oh, the animals.
Only it basically it came from bats. They think it came from bats, which a lot of coronaviruses do.
Because a guy
And
got that, and then it gave him coronavirus.
He bought him that.
well, there's bats. There might have been an intermediate animal, but they're not super sure yet if that was the case. But
maybe the bat bit an animal with COVID-19 and the other guy.
They think it might have been civets, actually, which is like a little tiny marsupial type thing.
Civet.
Yeah, a civet, but they're not really sure. The problem is that before they realized that they had an epidemic on their hands, they had a bunch of, gee, these are really strange symptoms that are coming together. I wonder why. And so you lose a lot of time, and you lose a lot of the ability to tell how the thing actually started.
And?
Does that make sense? Yeah.
And so it might last a while because we don't have any immunity.
We don't have any immunity to it. And so what a virus does, remember, the virus is motivated to keep on living and propagating itself, basically. So it's going to look for as many hosts. We are the host to this virus as possible to propagate itself, to keep going.
Parasite?
No, it's not exactly a parasite. It is something that, it's basically a piece of genetic material that sits around and waits for someone to pick it up. And then it hijacks our genetic material to make copies of itself in our body.
And then cell explodes.
And then what?
Our cell explodes.
Our cell.
Yes. Well, yes. Okay. So that is exactly what happens. It basically releases more of the virus.
Wow.
For this particular virus, the problem is all with our immune response to it. It's not necessarily that the virus itself is causing the problem, but there's inflammation because it's attracted to a certain type of protein that's located in certain parts of our bodies.
Got it.
And so our immune system goes crazy, and that's what actually causes the problems.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask our next question?
Yes. If someone gets it, are they immune after that? That's what my mom.
For most of the evidence that I have seen suggests that that is true. Viruses mutate a lot, and so like the flu is also a virus, and it mutates very quickly. And basically the outside of the virus has markers on it that your immune system either recognizes or does not. The flu is able to mutate enough every year so that our immune system doesn't recognize it. COVID does not seem to have that right now. It seems like most people are immune, but a lot of the problem is that all of this stuff it's kind of like standing in front of a fire hose. You just have all this information coming at you at once, and we're still trying to sift through like what the real issues are. The other thing is that most of the research is done on confirmed cases. And since we know that a lot of them can have mild cases that aren't going to the hospital, that aren't being researched, it's possible that the data that we're collecting is systematically biased because of the nature of the people we're collecting it from. So if we're doing all of our research on hospitalized patients, they're automatically sicker because that's where they are than the people who got a head cold and decided to stay home for a week. So that's part of the issue too. So the findings are really, really new. They're coming out just every day, and things are kind of constantly evolving. So that's part of the reason why most of the answers are sort of like, I sort of know, but maybe not, like, don't know exactly for sure.
Okay.
I'm brushing. I'll do it. What is the coronavirus, I think?
We already kind of covered that. What is the coronavirus? We skip to our next one.
Yes. What is the advantage of
staying
home for right now?
Staying home right now.
Yeah.
So remember how I said that the virus is looking to hijack our immune systems, right? It's looking to spread itself to as many people as possible, right? Because that's how it's going to live. If you stay home, you're not putting yourself in a place where the virus can hijack your immune system. You're saying, I'm over here, I'm not going to get exposed to the virus, so I'm not going to get sick. That's the advantage of staying home. That's the advantage of staying 6 feet away from everybody. And that's the advantage of not going out to play with your friends and things like that.
Okay. And it also helps protect other people who they
True, because that was my next part, was that viruses have a reproduction rate, basically, that encourage that if it's basically like it's infectivity. So if one person with a virus enters the room and sneezes, how many people will get sick because of that? So
anybody that touches the thing he sneezed on.
Well, on average, 2.5 to 3 people get sick every time. So if you're in a room with 10 people and one person is sick, that person will probably infect 3 people. Now, if those 3 people go into another room, they'll infect 3 people. Those 3 people go home, infect 3 people, right? So that's one of the reasons why it's important to stay home, because you want to limit your ability to be exposed. And a lot of people seem to, again, the data is really new, seem to shed the virus a lot more before they're symptomatic, meaning that they walk around for it's like between 2 to 14 days, they walk around feeling totally fine. And at the meantime, they're infecting everybody else.
So shedding the virus means contagious?
Yes.
You're contagious.
Okay.
Contagious is bad.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, it is.
This is good.
Do you want to ask the next question, Bo?
Yeah, whenever I see it on the script. Today's script on number 8, because we just did number 7, is what will happen to your pet if it gets COVID-19? Well, nothing, because you already answered the question about the thing about animals getting it. You already said
so there isn't a lot of evidence that it's carried by cats or dogs. So some viruses can be carried by animals and they don't experience anything. So like the bats probably carry the coronavirus and nothing happens to them. But as far as anybody's been able to tell, it is not something that's carried or transmitted by pets.
Okay. We have 3 or 4. Elias, do you want to ask a question, or should I? Our next question.
Wait, let me ask the next question.
So, okay.
Just let me find the question.
Here it is.
How many coronaviruses are there?
How many coronaviruses are there?
Like how many different types?
Oh, okay. So there's a lot, because coronaviruses cause some of the common colds. For our purposes, the respiratory ones, there are 3. There's SARS, which is sudden acute respiratory distress syndrome, SARS, which was something that was an outbreak like in 2009, I want to say. And then there's MERS, which is Middle Eastern Respiratory Distress Syndrome, which was a few years later. And then there's this one, which is the novel coronavirus.
COVID-19, dun dun dun. And the last question is, the second to last question is, how do you kill coronavirus?
Well, that's a good question, because you can kill it with soap. So the coronavirus, the reason it's called a coronavirus, and I saw you did a really cool Minecraft thing about this, is that it has all these little spikes on it, right?
Yeah.
And
I made
soap,
a coronavirus that I live in.
On Minecraft.
soap and warm water is, yeah, I see. It's beautiful.
I'll show you another, and I'll show you
Okay.
this one
Okay.
and
Mhm.
Okay, then let her answer the
this
question.
one and this one and this one.
Okay, and then let's listen
Let me
to the
see. So soap can kill the coronavirus. High levels of alcohol, like in hand sanitizer, can kill it. It's got to be over
So if
70%.
you filled your house with hand sanitizer and put on a scuba suit, there would be no coronavirus in your house.
Probably. I hadn't really thought of it that much. Where do you think the coronavirus can get into your body? Let's answer that. Where do you think? Eyes, nose, and mouth, right through your hands, because somebody coughs or sneezes on something and you touch it, right? That's why you always have to wash your hands.
Mm-hmm.
But it can't get into your skin. So for example, if someone sneezed on your arm, provided you washed it off real quickly, didn't touch it, and then touch your eyes, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, then you'd be okay. So it can only get in through what are called mucosal membranes, right? So in here, right up your nose, not going to do that one, your eyes, and part of your digestive tracts. So it only gets in there because those are the proteins that it attaches to. They're called the ACE2 proteins.
So if I had coronaviruses on my hands and I did this, touching my beautifully washed hair, I wouldn't get coronavirus?
Yes, provided you didn't then touch your hair and put your hands in your mouth. So a really good idea is to wash your hands a lot. Anytime you go outside, anytime you touch metal that's outside, because it lives the longest in metal. And so the problem is,
shortest on?
Huh?
When is it the shortest on again?
When did it start?
What is it the shortest on, he said? So long.
Oh, what is it? Okay. So the longest is certain types of metal, and the shortest is like cloth and cardboard and things like that.
So my crate boxes don't have coronaviruses on them, and if they did,
probably not.
They would die quickly because they're made of cardboard.
Probably, yeah. It doesn't live on there very long. The other question is, and keep in mind, all of this is changing, so they should have something come out tomorrow that will be totally different. The other thing is that even if it's alive on there, it may not be enough to cause an infection. We don't really know yet. So it could be alive on your cardboard box or whatever. Viruses aren't really alive, but they're sort of like active on a box and not be enough to infect you. So and again, a lot of this stuff is kind of it's a moving target. The reason that this coronavirus is so different than the other ones is it's much more transmissible. So like I said, 2.5 to 3 people versus the SARS and the MERS were like 1.5. I think the flu is like 1.5 or 2. So it's much more transmissible, and people are asymptomatic for a lot longer. Because remember, the virus wants to live and spread itself, but if you feel like crap, are you going outside and talking to your friends and going to the playground and touching stuff? No. So the virus's advantage is to keep you asymptomatic as long as possible so that you will keep infecting people.
We keep touching our face because we're itchy, and we have because of pollen.
And
yeah.
I have one more question.
Sure. Okay.
We showed her the picture of the Minecraft. Should we skip to this?
Do you like cupcakes? What kind?
Chocolate, and yes, please. Anytime. You want to give me a cupcake, I will take one. I think. Yeah. Elias, can I ask you something? Do you have any questions that you didn't write down about being alone or feeling like you're going to get sick or something that you might want to ask?
How long does the average person stay asymptomatic for?
Between 2 and 14 days.
Okay. And also, I'm thinking.
Are you worried that you might get it?
No.
Are you worried that anybody you know might get it?
No. Um,
Do you want
um,
to show?
No.
Okay. I was asking if you'd show another drawing, but he does
There's
decline.
one more thing I'm thinking about, which is if you electrocuted coronavirus, would it die?
I guess so, but it probably would kill a lot more. So, like, if you electrocute a person, they would die too. So, if you were trying to electrocute coronavirus in a person, they probably would not live. The best chance that we have is to stay home and lower the virus's ability to pass itself along to other people.
Yep.
And
That's it. Because if it has no hosts after a certain amount of time, there's nothing, it won't do anything. Okay.
do you think there will be a vaccine within a year or so?
You know what? It's interesting. I've been passing sort of seeing that stuff. I'm not super sure about that, but I can find out for you. I do think our better hope is in treating some of the symptoms of it, the symptoms of the immune response associated with it. A vaccine would be at least 12 months away, would be my guess.
Do you think this will be
12 months at least?
Do you think this will be worse than the flu pandemic in 1918? Was it 1918?
Oh,
Yes and no. I think it'll be better in the sense that we have more ways to be connected than we did before, like this. I also think that particular flu was much more virulent, meaning making people more sick to people our age, like people who are adults, right? Kind of spared the young and the old for some reason. And this is the opposite, where it's much more of the case fatality rates, which means of the amount of confirmed cases you get, how many die, is much worse in older people and babies under the age of 1. So I do think that it's some ways.
So me and my mom die from it.
We have less chance than.
Yeah, we have.
You have lower odds of dying from it. A lot of the people who are passing away have underlying conditions, meaning they're sick with something else already, and then they get this. And it's not even really the coronavirus that kills people. It's the immune response leads to what's called bilateral interstitial pneumonia, which means the spaces in between your lungs get filled up with fluid and you cannot get any oxygen. And that's a really hard thing to come back from. Even healthy people have a hard time coming back from it.
Also, all these facts are giving me a headache.
They are? You know what? I do this all day, every day. And I understand how you feel. But I'll tell you what, Elias, if you have any other questions, or you guys have any other questions, you can always call me back. And I will happily answer them if I can.
One more question.
Yes.
Does sticky stuff do anything to coronaviruses?
Like what?
Does it
sticky stuff like?
Does it kill them?
If you had sticky stuff on your face, would it attract them more, or would it repel them, or do you know?
Or if you
I don't think it would really do anything.
Get coronaviruses all over your face? Does the coronaviruses stick to it?
I don't know. I really don't know. I know the things because the way that you kill a virus is basically an envelope, a membrane surrounding a bunch of what's called RNA, which is genetic material. And the way that you kill a virus is to get rid of that membrane. So the RNA is just hanging out there. It's like a popsicle, then it just kind of melts and goes away.
No, if you had if you had a vacuum, would it be able to kill coronavirus?
You know what? It's probably way too small for that. Maybe if you had a really small vacuum.
You mean a vacuum cleaner or like a vacuum and?
What if you had a tiny vacuum cleaner?
No.
I don't know. I don't know. These are good questions. I have a friend who's a doctor on my team. I'll ask him.
We learned.
So maybe you could if you could get small enough to hold a coronavirus up to a bucket and shake the membrane into the bucket, would it die of it after you shook the membrane off of it?
It will die if you dissolve the membrane, yes. I'm not really sure about the bucket or making me smaller, because I got to tell you, if I were making myself smaller, it wouldn't be height I would be worried about. So I'm not really sure if I'm not really sure how that would work. Soap and water does seem to really, really work. And ultraviolet light works. Like
You
sunlight.
had ultraviolet. So if all the lights in your house were ultraviolet, would the coronavirus die? Fast?
Yes, but you would also get a really bad sunburn.
Yeah, until you turned off your lights and buttons.
Yeah.
So I saw something that said you should wash your clothes if you've gone around people, and or hang them in sunlight if you don't have access to a washer.
Yeah. So if you have to go to like an assisted living facility or something like that, someplace where there's a lot of outbreak going on, yeah, wash your clothes in hot water, and that should, do
My
the
dad
trick.
was just in New York City, the most infected place.
No, he was in New York State, not New York City.
So New York City right now is the most infected place. I would be surprised if it stays that way.
He's actually in New York State.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Buffalo. I think he avoided New York City, though.
Mm-hmm.
We're thinking of our friends in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where was I born again?
You were born in New York City.
So
I remember when you were born, Elias.
Yeah, I told Sarah when you were born.
So
You're
I was
Roosevelt
born
Hospital.
in the place that is now the most infected place in the world.
Do you know what that is called? That is called an epicenter. E-P-I, center. So you were born in the epicenter right now, anyway, of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Do you know what the first epicenter was?
What?
Wuhan, China.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Italy had a lot of cases. I heard that Louisiana has a lot of cases.
They do. Yeah. And so some of the work that I do right now is in modeling what is going to happen in places with very few healthcare resources, because when people go to the hospital, they need a lot of care, and how that's going to do. And Louisiana has a bunch of places I'm concerned about, actually.
We could call you back in G-Chat so I could show you my Minecraft thing in.
You know what, sweetheart? I have to finish some work because I was so busy today that I didn't get, and I was also educating Julia, that I didn't get a chance to finish my work. But I'll tell you what.
Back in G-Chat some other day?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to.
Well,
Okay.
it was great talking to you. Thanks for being our first interview. We learned a lot.
No problem. I hope it goes well, you guys.
We learned a lot.
Good. If you have any more questions, feel free to write me, okay?
Okay, we will.
Bye. Wash your hands.
We will.
Bye.
I think we'll do that.
Bye.
Bye.